Happy Leap Day, Karen.
Happy Leap Day. It's so funny because I looked at the Google has a really cute little sketch today that I stared at for a good long time before realizing, oh, it's a frog. That's a leap pad. Like, I get it. It's Leap Day. So super cute. Google if you haven't looked at it yet.
I have not looked at it, but I will.
Google Doodle,
Yeah.
cute.
Well, and for the audience, obviously you're used to us being on Friday, but we're pre-recording.
We are pre-recording.
Yep, on Leap Day, the luckiest day of the year, right? It's your lucky day if you're checking this out. And primarily because, Karen, you're about to travel around the world.
Yeah, I'm flying to Bangkok tonight from the New York area. So after we're done with this recording, my day gets pretty pragmatic about what do I have to do to actually, by the way, take the suitcase out of the attic, which is just kind of a ridiculous thing that I'm flying to Bangkok in a few hours and I haven't packed, but it's fine. Everything's going to be fine.
Passport?
Yes. Have my passport, have my global entry card, have my, have the app. Haven't checked in yet because it's we actually have a stop from New York to Bangkok. My stop is in Istanbul, which is actually the last flight that I took that of considerable length was to Istanbul. So I think it's really funny that I'm going to change planes in Istanbul. This is a long flight. So anyway.
Istanbul or Constantinople?
Yes. Well, it's a little dated at this point. They do call it Istanbul. So
it is. Sorry, the old. It's an old song. It's Istanbul or Constantinople is. Never mind.
Yes. Is that from the 80s? What was that from? Was that in the 80s?
That was from the 80s. Let's move on. So,
yeah.
The closest Oprah we ever get to me singing live.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, fun. But so I'm excited for that. And I'm actually excited because, spoiler alert, you're going to have a special stand-in for us next week. So I'm really excited for you because that'll be fun.
I am. So Natalie, our producer, and Natalie is awesome and cool. And not that you're awesome and cool too, but I think it'll be a lot of fun. So yep.
Yeah, I think that Natalie, for those of you who know from all of our event coordination, Natalie really is, my partner when it comes to curating speakers, and she produces the podcast, and she's just sharp as a whip too. So I think you'll have a great conversation, and I'm actually looking forward to catching it at some point after the recording. So fortunately, there's a lot of ways to catch this show after the fact, aren't there, Lenny?
There are, Karen. So, please go on. Tell us more.
Yes. Well, obviously, if you subscribe, if you check it out on YouTube, you subscribe, like and subscribe is what Lenny and I always say, right? Then you can always have that content coming back to you and in your new releases. If you catch it live on LinkedIn, the best thing to do is say you're attending that event, because then I think it shows up in your feed. But also we have started pushing out the recaps via our article ecosystem on Tuesdays. So the first one went live on Tuesday. So if you go to our Insights landing page on our greenbook.org, you'll be able to catch the first kind of repurposed exchange episode in article form. So it links to the video on YouTube so you can see it there, but also has the transcript for accessibility. So so we're bringing this to you in lots of different ways. I think that's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. And we won't give it away, but we're thinking had a great conversation this week about even more ways to do this. I think we're getting a handle on this multimedia thing now. And so stay tuned. We're going to give you even more options to absorb all of our content, including the exchange, or at least that's the plan, when the team can lift their head up and take a breath. So.
Yeah. And I think speaking of, our multimedia nature, if you are not checking out our podcast, we also just wanted to point out that you can find our podcast on all of the places where podcasts play, right? I listen to it on Spotify actually, but it's on Apple Podcasts and it streams to a few other devices as well. You can find it on our website. This week's podcast I hosted, and I'm really excited about it because it's with the founder of Athletic Brewing, which, by the way, in the non-alcoholic beer category, just beat out Heineken and Budweiser for non-alcoholic beer. $500 million brand from, like basically craft brewing in his basement a few years ago. So really great entrepreneurial story from a man who had no idea he'd ever be an entrepreneur. He just saw a gap in the industry, and what a white space innovation story. So really check out our podcast there. And it's, it might be competing with an episode that you hosted down the road. Or anyway, tell the people about that one, because I think that was you with Linda, correct?
Well, which Linda?
Linda Lomolino, Walmart.
From Walmart. Yes, it's still our highest ranked or most listened to podcast episode, with the launch of Walmart Illuminate, which is interesting and kind of evergreen content. I do want to point out, because we brought this up yesterday in an internal meeting. Somebody had mentioned, we watch your weekly podcast, and they were referring to the exchange, which is not how we had thought about it. So. Right. So if you haven't checked it out, the Green Book podcast is a long form conversation with generally single. Occasionally we'll have a kind of a small panel. 45 minutes, roughly 40 minutes to an hour conversation with one person on a specific topic.
Yeah.
Very different. We envision the exchange is really kind of a weekly news recap and commentary, but apparently people absorb the content in a very similar way, and that's why we're doing all these interesting things. But do check it out if you have not, because there are some really wonderful conversations in there. Karen and I tag team back and forth on hosting. We look for the unexpected, and I think we often find it. We've had, I have cried on our podcast unexpectedly with some of our conversations, and that's what we're looking for, is just an organic, deep, good conversation with great people doing cool things. So
I have been told my entire life, that I'm a very emotional human being, and it just kind of cracks me up that in the last week we've had 2 references to you crying, and and me dry-eyed.
Just a big softie.
My family would have a laugh about that in general. They're like, "Really, someone's beating you in the crying department, Karen? That's pretty funny."
I had to give up watching ER back in the day because I just couldn't handle it emotionally every time. It's like, no, I just can't. I don't want to watch this anymore.
No, I know. No, tears like that are good tears. It's because Lenny and I both have a ton of empathy to give, and I'm not saying that at all facetiously. Like, we are just those people, which is why we enjoy this so much. In our like minds, the podcast is very different because you don't get us interacting except on occasion when we're debriefing an event or something. You just get us and our guests. So
yep.
Anyway, so go check those out.
And do you want to do our final plug before we dive into the news, because there's a lot to talk about this week.
Yeah, there is. So final plug, friends. I just each morning when I'm kind of getting my ducks in a row for what my workday is like, I check into our platform to see event registrations, and it just looks like our North America event is starting that exponential growth for attendees right now. Hundreds of people have already registered. I think we've already passed, 500. We're closing in on 600, and we'll be up, closer to 1,200 probably by the time the event happens in, 6 weeks from now or so. So like really we're at that super sweet spot for registration. Get yourselves registered for North America. It's going to be a great show. These are just a few of the speakers. Thank you, Carly. Just a few of the speakers we have coming. Last week, tune into that episode. I read a whole list of them at the end. So I don't want to do that again, but use code exchange to get a 20% discount on your ticket. What else can we say about it? I mean, it's going to be a great event. Plus we have our competition added, and we had, I think, more applications for the competition than we've had in the past. So really going to be an exciting year for the competition.
Yeah, very really cool companies. It is. It's fantastic. IX, in my humble and totally non-biased opinion.
Because that's you, Mr. Humble.
Yeah. But we built it to be a fantastic event, and it continues to be a fantastic event. So, and you must attend it this year. I think it's critical because there's going to be a whole bunch of conversations and companies that will be driving. We're just at that stage now, right? Of the next phase of the industry, and this is where that's going to start taking shape. So, be there, be square.
Yeah, or be something else. Be whatever you'd like, but be there.
I'm kind of hexagonal is how I think of myself, but anyway. All right.
We're going to get into it. So let's start, Lenny, with a few product launches. So our show is in 2 parts today. We're going to talk about some pretty cool product launches.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to talk about the other stuff, which has to do with AI, of course. But every time I sort of look at our plan for today, I'm like, oh, that's where you might want to be sitting down because there's a lot going on there. So, just stuff to know about. But let's start with these launches because they're pretty impressive. You want to talk about this first one?
Yeah. So Stagwell launches their Unlock Surveys panel. And for those who are not familiar, Stagwell was a group started by Mark Penn, who you may know from his kind of public political life. Also has head of research at Microsoft. Also co-founder of PSB, Penn Burns Schoen. So kind of legendary in the industry. And it's the integrated marketing and technology platform. And here's what's I put that background because I think that's important because Mark recognized the value of data. And this is a theme that we're going to get to later on. Recognize the value of correct data. And so Stagwell, they've been buying up companies and they put together what they basically think of it this way. There's the layer of market research. There's Harris, there's Maru, there's these pieces. They're relaunching the Unlock Surveys panel, which is a way to collect fundamental real information that's loading up into what they call their marketing cloud, which is AI driven, and wrapped around that are these integrated marketing services. It's lots of companies are mimicking that model. It's probably really what the future is going to look like. But what's interesting about this is that they want to own the panel. They want to own the access to the consumers to collect the information to ensure that it is factual and truthful and high quality. And we've talked about these issues for all of our 31 episodes, right? On high quality data and the role of high quality data in the world of AI and et cetera, et cetera. This is just an example of, and make no mistake, I think they're over $1 billion, maybe $2 billion in revenue. I mean, this is not a small company. This is a big company. And they are doubling down on panels, by God. And because the data can be used for so many different reasons. So I think it's really important example that way.
Well, and I think that, and we'll have this link shared in just a minute to this launch, but I think what's important to take in and be mindful of about it is their focus on quality. I mean, one of the quotes here is under the current model, researchers and brands can spend tens of millions of dollars per year collecting online research from an increasingly unreliable pool of external suppliers. So harsh, but provocative. We'll give it that. But the reality is that we have been discussing this, and some of the work, like I said, that I've been brought into. We published the article about it. So the models for fraudulent responses, the botgate, all of these fraud at scale possibilities are making it more and more important for these stringent measures. So for me, I think that is one of these things that if I were an end client, if I were a brand, trust is not guaranteed anymore for me. I want to know, tell me what you're doing to ensure data quality on your panel, your participants, whoever you're feeding me. I need to trust it because it's a huge investment. So it's game on.
We can, if we don't title these episodes, but if there was one that was going to have a title, it would be garbage in, garbage out, because that is the theme of this everything we're going to talk about. And there's an example of that. So, which is a good segue. Our next one,
which is, we're not saying garbage in, garbage out. In this case, what we're saying is flowers in, flowers out. We're planting a garden, right? Because Yabble just announced their new tool, updating it's not their new tool. It's an update to their virtual audiences tool where users can upload their proprietary data for augmented data projects, right? So now we've got AI with a touch of augmented reality in there, I suppose. Lenny, I'm sure you know more about this tool, but this is more, let's not put garbage in, right? Let's put the good stuff in to get more out of it.
That's exactly it, right? So Yabble, they have the synthetic audience component or synthetic sample. They are a ChatGPT partner, an early pioneer in developing generative AI tools for research. definitely a leader in that respect, and they went to recognize the value of mining, the data to create profiles of customers, et cetera, and now they've launched the ability to be able to have your own proprietary data loaded in. And it goes back to the same idea of managing your data ecosystem, and ensuring that you have what you need to leverage the tools of AI to get truthful, factual, impactful information that is actionable, rather than kind of having it out there where we don't always know how contaminated the information may be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So, and now the question I have about that, when I first read this brief, I was thinking to myself, so Yabble, who, positioned in my mind as sort of AI assist for analysis and all that. Now I'm like, and now is it also going to be one part knowledge management platform? Will it be able to do that sort of, analysis across studies? Like, is it evolving into that? Maybe you can't even say, because I know you consult with them, but that's what's next in my mind, as I'm thinking, that's interesting. It's interesting.
it's where all these things are going. I do not know, actually. So I can safely say I have no information on what Yavel's thinking. But the trajectory is it's easy to see where these things go.
Yeah.
And whether it's them or somebody else, that's those worlds converge.
Yeah.
So it's all about good data, and then utilizing that data in a variety of ways to drive business impact, and everything else is just logistics, right? Along that process.
Yeah. So anyway, so kudos to them. Good luck with their new tool. One other tool, I think it's really interesting. I don't know if you had a chance to check it out. It came off Research Live, but it's iVisual's AI branding intelligence tool, and launch of this tool by iVisual for branding and packaging intelligence, showcasing AI's expanding role in the creative industries. And for anybody who's done kind of, packaging work or branding work, or, looked at all of those, all of that, everything that comes along with that, whether it's creative, whether it's logo design, whether it's font on pack, all of those assets. And now we're seeing some use cases that are, quite specific for the creative side of marketing research, right?
Yep.
Cool.
And we've seen, other companies moving in this direction for a while. Behaviorally rolled out their pack test kind of legend standard, right? And doing some of this stuff. And we're just going to see more and more of this. So it's another example of a new product, leveraging AI in the way that AI should be leveraged, in my humble opinion. So,
no, exactly. Like that's such a great point, actually, because there are going to be new products that come out that if you have the thought, oh, I should check that out, then please go check that out. Like if that's the thought that's stimulated, like that sounds like a good use case for me, because our job is going to be find the right use cases. That's what will help us navigate all the other stuff that we're finding a little more turbulent and uncertain about. But something like this, where it's like, hey, that might be a really efficient research tool that we can start to implement, or enhancement to your current research processes, pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Fit for purpose, right? I mean, and there were people who didn't know if telephone research was fit for purpose. And certainly, you and I have both been around long enough to remember the debates around online and panels and mobile and social media and all these things that now are just, we have to get through the process of finding what makes sense and what doesn't, and what's good and what's not, and yada yada yada. And we're just in an era we're going to see a lot more of that.
A lot more, as more and more investments are happening.
I see what you
I did there.
I do see what you did there. So we're going to talk about the Microsoft buying. I mean, is it any surprise that Microsoft is, they're going for the one ring to rule them all. So that, since that's the analogy of the du jour right now, bought Mistral. And I think what's interesting is the French AI company.
Yeah.
And there hasn't been a lot of innovation. You don't think about these European companies with AI. It's generally, that, not saying they're not there, but we've seen them more coming out of the U.S. and out of
Silicon Valley.
Silicon
And,
Valley,
yeah.
right? This was a fairly large French company. It was a big, it was a multi-billion-dollar deal, I believe,
Yeah.
um, and you can see where now Microsoft is looking at all these different models and deploying them, investing in them, acquiring them, and deploying them across the organization. It's not just ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's interesting. Is companies like Microsoft that provide global scale and
Yeah.
and global customers out of
Yeah.
the gate, right?
Yeah.
But looking at specific capabilities to augment and do that. So I'm quite certain that there's not a hell of a lot of duplication over Mistral and ChatGPT. It
Yeah.
does. I don't know the details of what it does, but it does something different or better
Yeah.
than OpenAI does.
Yeah.
And I think we'll continue to see those type of things happening. And yes, follow the money.
Yeah. And what I think is also really interesting about it, I'm actually one of the things I'm excited about for this trip that I'm taking is to get the global perspective. We've shared a few things about initiatives that are happening over in the European Union about how they're, kind of how they're wrangling it and legislation around it and all that. But I'm actually really curious that between this trip to Bangkok and then North America and
Mhm.
then our Europe event, like saying like, okay, what's the world's pulse on AI right now? So actually
Yeah.
really excited to bring that conversation back. And how are people feeling about this around the world? Where are we ahead? Where are we behind? Where are they nervous? Where are we nervous? Et
Right.
cetera. So
And it changes moment by moment
I know.
as our next
Right.
story.
Yes. Yes. All right. Why don't you start off talking about this Google thing? I know that, it jumped out at you when it first happened. And then we'll talk about what happened and then talk about the fallout as a result of it.
Yeah, so we got yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, Google launched Gemini publicly and or in beta. And Gemini is both an image generator and is a replacement for search,
Yeah.
right? And this all started first when people realized that the image generation wasn't working maybe as intended.
Yeah.
So and it got politicized. This is not a political issue. It's one of just Google made a decision on prioritization within their algorithm that was not always reflective of reality. And let's just leave it at that, right? If you want to find out more, there's tons of stuff out there about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
The uh, but that was tip of the iceberg, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So as people dug in more and more, because they smell blood in the water, and let's just be real, that's what the deal was.
Yeah.
They found that actually its results across the board were very, very biased, and in many cases simply manufactured, not
Yeah.
not true. And that's the issue. And the backlash of that, the next article, was they took a big old hit on the stock market
Financially.
because that's the issue. So you take all this; these were examples of a fundamental problem in my mind, which is we expect technology to not to have a thumb on the scale. We expect technology to deliver us factual information that
Right.
then we make decisions off of. This was an example, and I think it was a scary example for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um, of, but wait, no, you're interpreting, and in many cases, wrong. The technology was supposed to be a tool
Yeah.
um, to convey information for us to make decisions on,
Right.
was instead the not only was the underlying information unreliable, therefore all the recommendations, et cetera, were unreliable.
Well,
Um,
I feel like this has come up before where I've said, maybe not, anyway, where I've said often when we make decisions, and I kind of talk to my kids about this too, like we're making the best decision we can make with the information that we have right now. Hindsight's a ridiculous thing, right? 6 months from now, could you look back and say I might have made a different choice? Sure, if you found new information after you made that decision, right? So everybody's goal in our family is make the best decision you can make on the day you must make that decision with the information you currently have. That analogy, I share that just because that's what's happening in these in these portals, these large language models who have information in, but it's not everything. It's not the full context.
Right.
It is information that's been biased on the history of what it's been told only.
Right. Right.
And you know, and so on some level, not to humanize it, but it's making the recommendations or projecting something based on what it has only. So it is limited in scope and breadth and depth, and it's not a surprise to me that, you know, it's what's biased.
Well, and there's that. That is absolutely 100% true of the access to the information. And then secondarily, in this case, there was a decision made to prioritize certain things in how they analyze the information, which, you know, good, bad, or indifferent, it doesn't matter. I think that the backlash simply was, yes, not only maybe did you not have, did this, the algorithm didn't have necessarily all of the relevant information, but whether it did or did not, it conveyed it in a way that made it clear that it wasn't even close to reality.
Yeah.
From and that was just concerning. And here's the thing. We were talking, joking before, like, oh, this is the part we don't want to talk about, right? I'm just gonna, such a bummer. It's not because, you know what? Boy, I almost dropped our first real F-bomb. People screw up, and you can see you imagine what I so
Yeah.
the okay, and the market spoke.
Yeah.
Fix it,
Yeah.
move on. So I'm
Fix it.
glad that it's happened. I'm glad that in all the hype,
Yeah.
you know, that we had a big ass example, big glaring, very public example
Yeah.
of, oh, the bloom is off the rose. This isn't okay.
Right.
Now let's fix it and move on,
Right.
because it doesn't mean that all the solutions are bad. Doesn't mean that
Yeah.
in any way, shape, or form. It just meant that this went maybe a little bit too far in one direction, that we, as from even a business standpoint, as well as just, you know, general consumers, said,
Yeah.
yeah, no, we're not, this is not okay.
Yeah.
We're not ready for this.
Yeah.
Because it is scary.
Yeah.
My first thought was, as a parent, if I told my kids to go Google it
Yeah.
and they did this, no, because they wouldn't be able to tell that it was wrong.
I know. Well, and that is the problem. The problem right now with all of this is not so much in the businesses that have developed solid tools integrating AI technology, but the open source, everybody can access use cases for societal purposes, for lack of a better word, not B2B purposes, right? There's a big difference to me between B2B applications and this other space, right? And I think that that's where that's where we get a little unnerved. I mean, some of these other things we we could talk about, or we could just skim over, but you
Well,
know,
the TechCrunch example, I think we should talk about that real quick.
yeah. All right, go ahead. I don't remember which one's TechCrunch. Which one?
So here's an example, because all right, Google, we're not picking on you, love you.
Yeah.
Here's my Samsung phone, and we use Google. Right? So anyway, the TechCrunch
Yeah.
ran an article where they tested all of the LLMs. Well,
Yeah.
no, not all, but a bunch of them. So ChatGPT, Gemini, blah blah blah. Simply for accuracy of information about voting,
Yeah. That's
where to go, when to go, what you need, that type of stuff,
yeah.
and they were all bad.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a big problem. That's a huge problem, societal problem, right?
yeah,
Not even talking about politics and the elections in general, but talking about just AI applications being misinformed during this year. It's like, if it's one thing we need to rely on, it's that if we look something up, we get accurate information.
right, right, and that's about, so it's and you could replace that with anything else. Where's the closest doctor?
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
or where do I go? Whatever. And I remember early on when all this, I mean, a year ago, bringing up, look, we need to recognize that if the data is not good,
Yeah.
people could die,
Right.
literally, if like it deployed in healthcare, right,
Right.
with a recommendation. So again, I'm glad people are digging into this. They're understanding that there are limitations.
Yeah.
Um, It does not mean the train is still coming.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it slows it down just enough where
Yeah.
we could focus on fit for purpose and
Yeah.
optimization across the board.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and recognize our responsibility, which back to research, in my mind, I think is fundamental. Um, we provide data that presents truth, right? That
Yeah.
presents a view of the world.
Right.
And that is our role. So when I get all about this topic, that's it, because I'm thinking this is important. It's my job. It's your job. It's what we do,
Yeah.
and these big companies that are taking this much more macro view on curating and consolidating and analyzing and organizing the world's information, you
Yeah.
damn well better make sure that it's right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and we're discovering that it's not always right. And good. Now
Yeah.
let's get it right.
Yeah. 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 And I think that, we as, a media company, content marketing company, et cetera, we have use cases. We have to really watch for the information that any AI assists provide to us to make sure it is not just accurate, but relevant,
Mhm.
right? That it is absolutely giving us what we need and what's going to be helpful and beneficial when we use it for some internal use cases. And also, I think it just stands to reason that there's still incoming news, folks, on lawsuits over copyright issues,
Yes.
over, who owns the content that you might be using, who owns a sentence, or who owns an image. So for everybody who is doing experimentation, you know, be mindful of that for your business,
Mhm.
that there are copyright issues that you have to just be aware of. You cannot just assume, oh, I got this from this particular AI tool, and therefore it is highly usable for you. That's not necessarily the case. Be careful, right? Be careful.
Absolutely. And there's, and to your earlier point, traveling around the world, right, and seeing
Yeah.
these things, I think that there's different approaches to this all over.
Yeah.
And we're just in that Wild West period.
Yeah.
And that every week we joke about, it's the week in AI. This technology is utterly disruptive and transformative, and my stance has not changed. If you're not experimenting with this stuff, you better be right now,
Yeah.
right? Because it's here, it's coming. All these things we're talking about are kinks. They're
Yeah.
bumps in the road, but we're still going down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. And to
So
those of you who are, you've got your product in development and you're launching, make sure you let us know about them, because we will cover them, because we think people need to know. I mean, not everybody's curating the way Lenny and I curate, right? Not everyone is tracking product launches the way he and I are, but let us know. We will tell people what you're working on, and and what they should check out, because again, like the B2B use cases, those are the ones that you need to see what's right for you.
yeah, that last one, I think we should just mention this real quick, because of the visual. Right, we're kind of talking now about data in more contextual text, information. But then we got Sora, right, and
Yeah.
the image generation stuff. And I thought it was really telling that Tyler Perry um, uh, uh, was going to build this massive 800 million studio expansion. If you've never been to Atlanta, I mean, Tyler Perry has one of the largest studios in the world in Atlanta. That's where he makes all of his movies. And he said, after seeing Sora, he said,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do this now.
Yeah.
We're I'm not adding on to the studio. Why should I?
Oh, we put it on hold.
Yes, on hold. Um, and back to that example, like this is all happening. It's not
Yeah.
going to stop it. It's disruptive. It's changing. There's an example. It changes how we create content, uh, visual content, movies. Directors see that. It's great. The CGI. We probably went through the same thing with the advent of CGI versus old school special effects, right? Uh, and let's just be cautious
Yeah.
and think through how all this is going to play out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyway, not a bummer. I think it's exciting. It's good. It's good when we learn, right? Your kid,
Yes. Yes.
ouch, the stove is hot. Yeah, I'm
Yes.
not going to touch the stove anymore.
I know, it's really funny. It's like, yes, there's that, hurry up and learn how to cook right now, but the stove is hot. So,
Right.
there's risks with cooking, as there is with AI.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as you know, as parents, I mean, there's a little bit like, oh, I want to comfort you that you did this, but I bet you're not going to do that again, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so here we are. We're,
Yes.
you
Let's
know,
hope not everybody learns things the hard ways, but they they just, they go into it with their eyes wide open. So
th-
anyway, oh gosh, 35 minutes in, we really need to wrap.
we do,
So,
we
but
do.
then we
Let's
covered
go.
our announcements earlier.
It is, it is. But see, all right, here's the peril being pre-recorded, right? We went a little long
I
there.
know. I know.
Anyway, so folks, we'll be back next week live. Karen will be laying on a beach
I will.
in Southeast Asia.
Yes.
But we will have Natalie as the co-host, and Natalie will keep me on my toes. And until then,
Log in and give her a hello. I'm sure that'll be exciting for her. I can't wait to check it out. And then I'll see you all again in 2 weeks. So that's fun too.
absolutely.
Well,
All right.
I'll make sure I tell everybody. Well, I'm going to give Natalie some insight into what happened in Asia at our event, so she can share a little bit next week. What's word on the street over there.
Yep, that'll be cool. So, thanks for tuning into this one, and that's it. We'll talk to you next week.